betrayal and banishment. The healer nobody wanted. Alara had always known she was different. The jagged scar running from her left temple down to her jaw made sure everyone remembered it too. She had gotten it as a child when she saved her younger brother from a wild bear attack. The beast's claws had torn her face open, but she had never regretted putting herself between the animal and her family. Her brother lived. That was what mattered. But in a world where Omegas were valued for beauty and submission, her scar made her an outcast. The pack members of Silvercrest whispered when she passed. Children pointed. Young wolves looked away rather than meet her eyes. Only her healing gift kept her useful to the pack. She could mend wounds that should have been fatal, cure sicknesses that baffled other healers, and brew medicines that worked like magic. That gift was the only reason Beta Marcus had agreed to mate with her. The promise that turned to poison. Marcus had courted her for 6 months. He brought her wildflowers from the meadow. He told her that her scar showed courage, that she was beautiful despite what others said. He promised that when they mated, he would make sure no one ever disrespected her again. Alara had been so grateful, so desperate to believe that someone could love her, that she ignored the warning signs. She ignored how he only visited her cottage at night when no one would see. She ignored how he never defended her when pack members made cruel jokes. She ignored the way his eyes would drift to other she-wolves during gatherings, lingering on their perfect faces and unblemished skin. Love, she told herself, required patience and understanding. The mating ceremony was scheduled for the full moon in autumn. Alara spent weeks preparing. She sewed her own dress from silk she had saved for years to buy. She practiced the traditional vows until she could recite them in her sleep. She made a healing amulet for Marcus, pouring her power into it so it would protect him in battle. Everything had to be perfect. The day before the ceremony, her cousin Vivian arrived. The cousin who took everything. Vivian was everything Alara was not. Golden hair that caught sunlight like spun honey. Skin smooth as cream without a single mark. Eyes the color of spring leaves, bright and sparkling with mischief. She had been traveling with her merchant father for 3 years, and she returned looking like a goddess descended from the moon herself. Cousin! Vivian had embraced Alara with false warmth, her perfume overwhelming and expensive. I came as soon as I heard about your mating ceremony. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Alara had hugged her back, remembering the girl who had been her childhood playmate. Back then, before Vivian's beauty fully bloomed, they had been close. They had shared secrets and dreams. But that was before Vivian learned that beauty was power, and power was everything. It's so wonderful to see you, Alara said, meaning it. You look incredible. And you look... well. Vivian's eyes flickered to the scar, and Alara saw the familiar mix of pity and disgust that everyone wore when they looked at her face. I'm sure Marcus is very lucky. That should have been Alara's first warning. The way Vivian said, lucky, sounded like she meant desperate. The ceremony that shattered dreams. The mating ceremony took place in the great clearing at the heart of Silvercrest territory. The entire pack gathered, over 300 wolves dressed in their finest clothes. Lanterns hung from the trees, casting warm golden light over everything. The Alpha and Luna sat on their ceremonial thrones, ready to bless the union. Alara stood at the altar in her carefully sewn dress, her white hair braided with autumn flowers, her hands trembling with nervous joy. This was it. This was the moment her life would change. She would finally belong. She would finally be loved. Marcus arrived late, which should have been the second warning. He wore his beta ceremonial robes, dark blue embroidered with silver wolves. He was handsome in a sharp, cold way, with black hair and ice-blue eyes. But as he walked toward the altar, his eyes weren't on Alara. They were on Vivian, standing in the front row of spectators, wearing a dress of emerald green that clung to every curve. The ceremony began. The Alpha spoke the traditional words about mates and destiny and the bonds that tie wolf to wolf. The pack howled their approval. Alara's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. This was really happening. Then came the moment when Marcus was supposed to accept the bond, to speak the words that would tie them together for life. Marcus turned to face the assembled pack instead of Alara. "I cannot do this," he announced, his voice carrying clearly across the clearing. "I cannot bind myself to someone I don't love. I cannot pretend that duty is the same as desire." The pack fell silent. Alara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. "I have found my true mate," Marcus continued, and he looked directly at Vivian. "She is everything I have searched for. Beautiful, graceful, perfect. I claim Vivian as my mate, not Alara." The gasps from the crowd sounded like a storm wind rushing through trees. Alara stood frozen, unable to process what she was hearing. Marcus couldn't mean this. They had planned everything. He had promised. But Vivian was already moving forward, her face arranged in false shock, though Alara could see the triumph glittering in her eyes. "Marcus, we can't. Alara is my cousin. This isn't right." "It's the only thing that is right," Marcus said, taking Vivian's hand. "I'm sorry, Alara, but you must understand. A beta must have a mate who enhances his position, not diminishes it. Look at yourself. Look at her. The choice is obvious. The accusation that sealed her fate." Alara wanted to scream, to rage, to demand justice. But she was an Omega, and Omegas didn't make scenes. So she simply stood there, tears streaming down her scarred face, while her mate and her cousin embraced in front of the entire pack. The Alpha looked uncomfortable, but he didn't intervene. A Beta had the right to reject a mate if he claimed to have found his true one. Cruel, yes, but within pack law. That should have been the end of Alara's humiliation. She should have been allowed to leave quietly, to nurse her broken heart in private. But Vivian wasn't finished destroying her. 3 days after the ceremony that never happened, the Alpha's youngest son collapsed during training. He was only 12 years old, a promising young wolf who was expected to become Beta himself one day. Within hours, he was burning with fever, his body convulsing, foam flecking his lips. The pack healer examined him and found traces of nightshade in his system. Nightshade that had been mixed into a healing tonic. A healing tonic that Alara had prepared. The Alpha himself came to her cottage with guards. His face was carved from grief and rage. "Did you poison my son?" he demanded. "No." Alara's denial was immediate and desperate. "Alpha, I would never. I gave him medicine for his training injuries, yes, but it was just willow bark and honey, nothing dangerous. Someone must have tampered with it after I gave it to him. My healer found nightshade, Alara. Nightshade that came from your garden. Nightshade that only you know how to prepare in a way that hides its taste. Someone is framing me," Alara insisted, her mind racing. Who would do this? Who would want to destroy her so completely? Then she knew. She knew with absolute certainty. It was Vivian. She must have added the poison after I prepared the tonic. She wants me gone. But the Alpha wouldn't hear it. Vivian has no reason to harm my son. She's barely been here a week. You, on the other hand, were just publicly humiliated at your own mating ceremony. You had reason for revenge. I would never hurt a child. Alpha, please, you've known me my whole life. I heal people. I save lives. I would never. The evidence is clear. The Alpha interrupted, his voice hard as stone. You are hereby banished from Silvercrest territory. You have until sunrise to leave. If you are found within our borders after dawn, you will be killed on sight. But where will I go? Alara's voice broke. This is my home. My family is here. Everything I know is here. You should have thought of that before you tried to murder my son. The Alpha turned to his guards. Make sure she leaves. If she tries to take anything beyond basic supplies, stop her. As the guards escorted her from her cottage, Alara saw Vivian watching from the shadows of a nearby house. Her cousin smiled, a small, satisfied curl of her lips, and Alara understood. This had all been planned. The seduction of Marcus, the poisoning of the Alpha's son, the framing of Alara for the crime. Vivian had orchestrated everything to take Alara's place and eliminate any threat to her new position. Into the darkness. Alara was allowed a small pack with some clothes, food for a few days, and her most basic medical supplies. Everything else, her home, her herbs, her carefully collected medicines, her mother's jewelry, her entire life, was taken from her. She walked through the pack territory one last time as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Pack members she had healed, people whose lives she had saved, turned their backs as she passed. No one spoke to her. No one said goodbye. At the border, she turned to look back at the only home she had ever known. Somewhere in that territory, Marcus and Vivian were probably celebrating. They had won. They had everything while she had nothing. The wilderness beyond Silvercrest territory was dangerous. Rogue wolves hunted there, wolves who had been exiled from their own packs and had given in to their savage nature. Wild animals roamed the forests, predators who would see a lone Omega as easy prey. Most wolves who were banished didn't survive more than a few weeks. Alara didn't care. Let the rogues come. Let the predators find her. What did she have left to live for? She walked through the night, putting distance between herself and Silvercrest. Her feet bled. Her legs ached. Her heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest and crushed into dust. She was alone in a way she had never been before, truly and completely alone. As dawn broke over the mountains, Alara collapsed beside a stream. She drank deeply, the cold water shocking her system. She should keep moving. She should find shelter. She should do something, anything, to survive. But what was the point? She lay down on the mossy ground and closed her eyes. If death wanted to find her here, she would welcome it. The shadow in the trees. Alara didn't know how long she lay there. Hours maybe, or days. Time seemed to lose all meaning. She drifted in and out of consciousness, fever burning through her from exhaustion and despair. In her dreams, she saw Marcus's face as he rejected her. Vivian's triumphant smile. The Alpha's hard, unforgiving eyes. The pack turning their backs on her. Over and over, the images played like a cruel theater in her mind. She woke to find someone standing over her. For a moment, she thought it was death itself. The figure was massive, easily over 6.5 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a presence that made the air feel heavy. He wore black from head to toe, and his face was partially obscured by shadows even in the daylight. "You're dying," he said, his voice deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. It wasn't a question. "Good," Alara whispered. Her throat was dry as sand. The stranger crouched beside her, and she finally got a clear look at his FSC. He was perhaps 30 years old, with features that would have been handsome if they weren't so hard. His jaw was strong, covered in dark stubble. His hair was black as midnight, falling to his shoulders. But it was his eyes that captured her attention. They were gold. Pure, molten gold, like the eyes of a predator. "You're from Silvercrest," he said, noticing the small pack beside her with the pack symbol embroidered on it. "They banished you." "Yes." "What did it matter?" "Why?" "Because I was framed for poisoning the Alpha's son. Because my mate rejected me for my beautiful cousin. Because I'm scarred and useless and no one wants me." The words came out bitter and broken. The stranger studied her face, his gold eyes tracing the line of her scar with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable. But she was too tired to care. "You're a healer," he said, noticing her medical supplies. "I was. The Alpha's son. Is he alive?" Alara thought about the boy's convulsions, the foam on his lips, the amount of nightshade it would take to cause those symptoms. Probably not. Whoever poisoned him used enough to kill a full-grown wolf. A child wouldn't survive it. But you could have saved him, if you had been there with the right medicines. Yes. Another wave of pain crashed through her. She had failed that boy, even though the poisoning wasn't her fault. She had failed everyone. The stranger was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My name is Damon. I'm the Alpha of the Shadow Moon Pack. And I'm going to give you a choice." Alara forced her eyes open wider. The Shadow Moon Pack. She had heard stories about them, whispered in frightened voices around fires. They were the ghosts of the wolf world, a pack that lived in the deepest parts of the wilderness. They were said to be brutal, merciless, taking what they wanted and destroying anyone who stood in their way. Other packs feared them, and their alpha was offering her a choice. "You can die here," Damon continued, his gold eyes never leaving her face. "I'll leave you, and nature will take its course. Or you can come with me. Let me heal you, train you, make you strong. And when you're ready, I'll help you get revenge on everyone who destroyed you." "Why?" Alara couldn't understand. "Why would you help me?" Damon's smile was sharp and dangerous. "Because I know what it's like to be betrayed by your own pack. Because I believe in justice. And because something tells me that you're more valuable than anyone in Silvercrest ever realized." He held out his hand. "So what will it be, Alara? Death or revenge?" Alara looked at his outstretched hand. She thought about Marcus and Vivian, probably mated by now, living in comfort while she rotted in the wilderness. She thought about the alpha who had believed the lies so easily. She thought about the pack that had turned their backs on her without a second thought. Maybe death was the easy way out. Maybe revenge was the path she was meant to walk. She reached up and took Damon's hand. His grip was strong and warm, and as he pulled her to her feet, Alara felt something she hadn't felt since the ceremony. Purpose. "Revenge," she whispered. "I choose revenge." Damon's smile widened. "Good. Then let's begin. Transformation and rising power. Welcome to Shadow Moon." The journey to Shadow Moon territory took 3 days. Damon carried Alara for the first day when she was too weak to walk. She drifted in and out of consciousness, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion and trauma it had endured. When she was awake, she noticed how different Damon was from Marcus. Marcus had always needed attention, needed to be seen and admired. Damon moved through the wilderness like he was part of it, silent and efficient. He never complained about carrying her weight. He never made her feel like a burden. He simply did what needed to be done. On the second day, Alara was strong, enough to walk on her own, though Damon stayed close in case she stumbled. They traveled through forests so dense that sunlight barely penetrated the canopy. They crossed rivers that ran cold and clear from mountain springs. And slowly, Alara began to notice something strange. She could feel lies in the air like a bad smell. When Damon said, "We're almost there," but they still had hours to go, she knew he was stretching the truth to keep her motivated. When a bird called out in warning and Damon said, "Just a hawk, nothing dangerous," she knew he was lying to keep her calm. There was something else out there, something he had sensed but didn't want to frighten her with. She didn't say anything about this new awareness. She wasn't even sure what it meant, but she filed the information away, letting it settle in her mind like sediment in a stream. On the third day, they arrived at Shadow Moon territory. Alara had expected something dark and forbidding, matching the pack's fearsome reputation. Instead, she found a hidden valley carved between 2 mountain peaks, with a river running through its heart. The pack buildings were built into the mountainside itself, using natural caves expanded and reinforced with stone and timber. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way, but it was the wolves themselves that shocked her most. She had expected warriors, brutal and savage. Instead, she saw families, mothers with pups, elders sitting in the sun, young wolves training in a courtyard, laughing as they practiced their forms. They looked at Damon with respect and affection, not fear. "You're not what I expected," Alara admitted as they walked through the settlement. "Neither are you," Damon replied. "The rumors say Shadow Moon is filled with exiles and rogues. The truth is, we're filled with wolves who didn't fit in their birth packs. Wolves who were too different, too strong, too independent. Wolves who were cast out for not following unjust rules. We made our own pack, our own rules, and we protect our own fiercely." He led her to a guest house carved into the mountain, with a bed, a fireplace, and a window overlooking the valley. "Rest here tonight. Tomorrow your training begins." "Training for what?" Alara asked. Damon paused in the doorway, his gold eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. "Training to become someone who can stand against those who hurt you. Training to become someone they'll fear." training to become the Luna this pack deserves. And then he was gone, leaving Alara alone with those shocking words echoing in her mind. Luna. He wanted her to become Luna of Shadow Moon, the gift that changed everything. The next morning, Alara woke to find clothes laid out for her. Not the simple servant's dress she had worn in Silvercrest, but training clothes made of supple leather and strong fabric. Boots that fit perfectly. A cloak of dark gray that would blend into shadows. A woman arrived shortly after, introducing herself as Kira, Shadowmoon's head trainer. She was in her 40s, with silver streaking through her brown hair and scars that spoke of countless battles won. The Alpha says you're to be trained in combat, strategy, and leadership, Kira said, looking Alara up and down with a critical eye. I'll be honest, you don't look like much. But the Alpha's never wrong about potential, so I'll give you a chance. Don't make me regret it. The first week was brutal. Alara had never trained for combat before. Omegas in Silvercrest were healers and caregivers, not fighters. Her muscles screamed in protest as Kira pushed her through basic conditioning. Running, climbing, lifting, building strength she had never needed before. Your body is weak, Kira said bluntly after Alara collapsed from her 10th attempt at scaling a training wall. But your spirit isn't. That's what matters. The body can be trained. The spirit either has fire or it doesn't. Yours is burning. By the second week, Alara was learning actual combat. How to block a punch. How to dodge a kick. How to use an opponent's momentum against them. She was smaller than most wolves, but Kira taught her that size didn't matter as much as speed and intelligence. You'll never overpower a larger opponent, Kira explained, demonstrating a throw that sent a male wolf twice her size flying. So you outsmart them. You find their weaknesses. You make them underestimate you. Then you strike when they're not expecting it. It was during her third week of training that Alara's new gift fully manifested. She was sparring with another trainee, a young male named Jacob who was going easy on her because she was new. Alara could feel it, could sense the way he was holding back, could almost taste the lie in every pulled punch and slowed kick. Stop, she said suddenly, stepping back. Stop treating me like I'm fragile. Fight me for real. Jacob glanced at Kira, who nodded. You heard her. Fight for real. Jacob's next attack came with full force, a strike aimed at her ribs that would have broken them if it connected. But Alara wasn't where he expected. She had sensed his intention a split second before he moved, felt the direction of his attack like a whisper in her mind. She dodged, countered, and to everyone's shock, landed a solid hit to his solar plexus that dropped him to his knees. Kira stared at her with new respect. How did you know where he was going to strike? I just felt it, Alara said, staring at her own hands in wonder. I felt his intention, like he was announcing it before he moved. Kira and Alara went immediately to Damon, who listened to the description of what had happened with growing interest. You can sense intentions and lies, he said slowly. That's an incredibly rare gift. Most wolves can't develop that kind of awareness even with years of training. You're doing it naturally. What does it mean? Alara asked. It means you have a weapon more valuable than any blade, Damon replied. In negotiations, in politics, in battle, knowing when someone is lying or what they truly intend to do is priceless. We need to develop this gift, strengthen it. The Alpha's secret pain. Over the following weeks, Alara's training intensified. She worked with Kira on combat and with Damon on developing her truth-sensing ability. She discovered she could push her awareness outward, reading the intentions of everyone in a room. She could tell when someone was hiding something, when they were planning betrayal, when they were genuinely loyal. It was exhausting at first, like using a muscle she had never known existed. But gradually it became easier, more natural. By the end of her second month in Shadow Moon, Alara could sense lies as easily as hearing words. She also began to understand Damon better. He was careful to keep his distance emotionally, maintaining the role of alpha and mentor rather than friend. But Alara's gift showed her things he didn't say out loud. She sensed his loneliness, a deep ache that he carried like a physical wound. She sensed his rage at injustice, burning hot and controlled beneath his calm exterior, and she sensed his growing, what? Attraction, respect, something toward her that he was fighting hard to suppress. One evening, after a particularly hard training session, Alara found Damon sitting alone by the river that ran through the valley. The sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple. He looked less like an fearsome alpha and more like a man carrying too much weight. "Can I join you?" she asked. He nodded, and she sat beside him on the smooth rocks. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Alara asked the question that had been building in her mind for weeks. "Why are you really helping me? I told you, I believe in justice." "That's true, but it's not the whole truth," Alara said quietly, her gift confirming what she suspected. "There's something personal in this for you. Something about my story that resonates with yours." Damon was silent for so long that Alara thought he might not answer. Then he spoke, his voice rough with old pain. "I was born into the Nightshade Pack, one of the largest and most powerful packs in the Southern Territories. My father was Alpha. I was raised to take his place, trained from birth to lead. And I had a mate, Celine. We were bonded young, childhood friends who grew into love. She was everything to me." He paused, staring at the water as if seeing the past reflected in its surface. "My younger brother, Kieran, was always jealous. He thought he should be Alpha because he was more charismatic, more liked by the pack. But tradition said the eldest son inherited the title. So Kieran decided to take what he wanted by force. He poisoned our father, making it look like a natural illness. Then he claimed that I had done it, that I was hungry for power and couldn't wait for my inheritance." Alara felt her breath catch. The parallels to her own story were striking. "Celine believed him," Damon continued, and his voice broke slightly on her name. "My own mate believed the lies. She testified against me at the trial. Said she had seen me preparing the poison, had heard me talking about how I couldn't wait for my father to die. All lies, but she sold them so convincingly that the pack believed her. I was sentenced to death." "But you escaped," Alara said softly. "I fought my way out, killed 3 guards in the process, which only proved to the pack that I was dangerous and guilty. I ran to the wilderness and started building Shadow Moon from nothing. Other exiles found me. Wolves who had been cast out for crimes they didn't commit or for simply being different. We made our own family." "What happened to Celine and your brother?" Damon's smile was bitter. "They mated. Kieran became Alpha with my former mate at his side. Last I heard, they're ruling Nightshade W. with an iron fist, crushing anyone who questions their authority." "Do you still love her?" The question slipped out before Alara could stop it. "No," Damon said, and Alara's gift told her it was the truth. "I loved who I thought she was. The real Celine, the one who could betray me so easily. I never knew her at all. That was years ago. I've moved on." But Alara sensed the lie in those last words. He hadn't moved on. He had buried the pain and built walls around his heart, but he hadn't healed. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "You deserved better." "So did you," Damon replied, finally looking at her. "That's why I'm helping you. Because I see myself in you, Alara. Someone who was destroyed by betrayal but refused to stay broken. Someone with fire still burning inside despite everything that's happened. When I found you dying in the forest, I saw a chance to give someone else the opportunity one wished I'd had. A chance to fight back. A chance for justice." Their eyes met, and Alara felt something shift between them. Not the instant, overwhelming pull of a mate bond, but something deeper. Recognition, understanding, a connection forged from shared pain and shared purpose. "Thank you," Alara said, "for seeing me when no one else would." "You make it easy," Damon replied softly. "You shine, Alara, even when you don't realize it. That scar on your face? It doesn't make you ugly. It makes you memorable. It shows that you've survived something that should have killed you. That's not weakness. That's strength." For the first time since Marcus's rejection, Alara felt beautiful. The news from Silvercrest. 3 months after Alara arrived in Shadow Moon, A traveling merchant brought news that changed everything. The merchant came through their territory regularly, trading supplies and information. He was one of the few outsiders Shadowmoon trusted, and Damon always paid him well for news from other packs. Heard something interesting about Silvercrest, the merchant said over dinner in the Great Hall. Their luck's turned bad. Real bad. Alara's head snapped up. She had been trying not to think about her former pack, focusing instead on her training and transformation. But hearing its name still sent a spike of pain through her chest. What kind of bad luck? Damon asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. Started right after the new beta's mating ceremony. The one where he took that beautiful girl, Vivian, I think her name was. Right after that, everything went wrong. The crops started dying, even though it was the middle of growing season. The hunting parties came back empty-handed day after day. Wolves started falling sick with fevers that their healers couldn't cure. The merchant took a long drink of ale before continuing. And then there's the really strange part. The old alpha's son, the one who was poisoned, he didn't die. Some miracle pulled him through. But he's been having nightmares ever since, screaming about a golden-haired she-wolf who fed him poison. Says he saw her do it, clear as day. Alara's hands clenched into fists under the table. Vivian, she whispered. The boy keeps saying it was the beta's new mate who poisoned him, not the healer they banished. But no one wants to believe it. The beta and his mate are in power now, and speaking against them is dangerous. After the merchant left, Damon found Alara in the training yard, working through combat forms with a fury that had her movements sharp and precise. You heard the news, he said. They're suffering. The pack that cast me out is suffering. Alara drove her fist into a training dummy hard enough to rock it backward. And part of me is glad. Part of me wants them to hurt the way they hurt me. That's natural, Damon said. But there's something else you're feeling too. Alara stopped, breathing hard. Guilt. Those people, most of them never did anything to me personally. They just believed the lies. And now they're sick and starving because Vivian did something to curse the land. Children are going hungry. Elders are dying. It's not fair that they should suffer for what Vivian and Marcus did. So what do you want to do about it? Alara turned to face him. I want to go back. Not to save them, not yet. But to find out the truth. To expose what really happened. To make Vivian and Marcus face consequences for their actions. That's a dangerous plan, Damon warned. If you go back to Silvercrest territory, they could kill you on sight. You're still under banishment. Then I'll go in disguise. I'll gather evidence. I'll find proof of what Vivian did. Alara's resolve hardened with each word. I'm not the same wolf they banished. I'm stronger now, smarter. I have gifts they don't know about. And I have you and Shadowmoon backing me. Damon studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The Harvest Moon Festival is in 2 weeks. Silvercrest always celebrates it with a gathering open to traveling merchants and visiting packs. We could enter as traders, scout the situation, see what we're dealing with. We? Alara asked. You didn't think I'd let you do this alone, did you? Damon's smile was sharp and dangerous. Besides, I'm curious to see this beta who threw away a treasure like you for fool's gold like Vivian. The bond that grew in darkness. Over the next 2 weeks, Alara and Damon prepared for their infiltration of Silvercrest. They practiced their cover story, merchant partners looking to trade medical supplies. They prepared disguises that would hide their identities. And they trained together constantly, developing the kind of synchronization that only came from deep trust and understanding. Somewhere in those preparations, something shifted between them. Started small. Damon's hand steadying her during a difficult climbing exercise, lingering just a moment longer than necessary.